Let's look at some ways to sort things that are in lists. There's one method for lists that we can use. It's called sort. So we have our list and we call this method .sort on it, and it will return. Actually, what it does is it takes that list and in place sorts it so that we can get back, instead of 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a sort method specific to list, right? There's another way to do this, and that's with the sorted function. This works a little bit differently. So if we have our list, my list, with 4 numbers, we then put that list into the function sorted, give it a variable name, new list. If we then print out my list, we're going to get the original list back. Nothing's changed. However, if we print out or call new list, we will get the sorted list. So we can use either sort or sorted to sort something in a list. The big difference here is that sort sorts the original list. It modifies that list in place, whereas sorted returns a new list that is sorted. Sorted has a lot of advantages, so we're going to look at that more closely. It's much more flexible. For one thing, as you can see that it's a function, not a method, it's not specific to lists. So you can also call sorted on strings. So the string CDBA can be sorted with sorted. However, note that it's not returning a string, it's returning a list with each of the elements in that string as an element in the list. So sorted always returns a list of sorted items, but you can call it on anything that can be looped over. So you can't call it, you can't call the sort method, which is specific to list, on strings. You'll get an attribute error. It doesn't know what to do because it's a specific method for list. So sort can only be used with list. Sorted, however, can be used with any object you can loop over, such as a string in this case. Any object you can loop over is also known as an iterable. So what is iterables? Let's take a moment and look at this concept in programming. Some data types are iterables. Any Python data type that you can loop over, say for example that you can run a for loop on, is an iterable. You can iterate over it. This includes strings, lists, sets, dictionaries. All of these can be looped over. Now, we have to remember that for sets and dictionaries, the items come out in no particular order. Every time you loop over it, you might get a different order. However, all 4 of these things can be looped over. They can be iterated over. Therefore, they are iterables. You can run your for loop on a dictionary. The only difference between this one and the other 3 is that it will only loop over the keys in the dictionaries. The others, of course, don't have that association between 2 things. Now, if you try to run a for loop on an integer, so for a in 1, for example, and then print it out, it's not going to print out the 1. It's just going to throw an error. It's going to throw a type error and say the int object is not iterable. So it's not an iterable. So you can always tell, it's not a very nice way to tell because you're getting red errors, but you can always tell whether or not something is an iterable by trying to run it on a loop. If you get an error when you're looping, then it's a non-iterable. So sorted runs, you can call it on any iterable, anything that you can loop over. So if you call it on a dictionary, this is what you'll get back, a list of sorted items. And notice what happened here. Perhaps not entirely surprising based on what we know with loops and dictionaries, it created a new list only from the keys. It sorted them and created a list and returned them as a sorted list. In this case, it was alphabetically. And remember, we're doing this by the ASCII values. So it's, if you have capital letters, you're going to get weird stuff going on, right? So that's probably the one idiosyncrasy that you have to remember. If you call sorted on a dictionary, it's only going to sort the keys. And in fact, we're going to lose the values that go with the keys. So is there a way to somehow sort a dictionary into something that keeps both keys and values and has them both sorted? And remember, dictionaries have no order, so it's not just a simple, way of calling first the keys and then the values maybe. Can't always guarantee what order it will come out in. There is, but to do that, let's first learn about a new method that goes with dictionaries. Okay, and this method is called items. So we've learned in previous videos the method for keys. We can get a list of keys, and values is another method. Will give you a list of the values, and it will keep them in order if you call them in the same program. But this particular method, items, is a bit nicer and easier to work with if you want to keep them keys and values together, but sort them or do other things with them. So every dictionary has a .items method that returns a list-like view. So if we have this dictionary, and then we call the method .items, Jupyter, if we run that cell, we're going to get this view back. So you can see that we have a list, and in it we have several tuples. The first item in the tuple is the key, and the second one is the value. So we have something that is equivalent to a list of tuples. And remember that tuples are like lists. The difference between them, of course, is that they have parentheses to mark them instead of square brackets, but the big difference in their data type is that they're immutable, whereas lists are mutable. So you can work with them just like lists. And so you could call, for instance, if you want to access one item in the tuple that's within a list, you can use a square bracket notation. You can get to the first item in the first list by doing mydict.items and doing square bracket notation 0 and then another 0. That's going to get you to the first item in that first item of the list. So the first item of the tuple, which is the first tuple in the list. And if you want to get to the 1, which is the second item in the first tuple, then mydict.items and then 0 for the first tuple and 1 for the second item in that tuple. Okay? Once we have it, we've gotten those items, we can then run the sorting. Let's see how this works. So we take our dictionary here. We're going to call the items, so we get that list-like thing back with the tuples in them, and then we're going to call sorted. And this is the return right here. So look at that for a second. Think about what's happened here. What is it sorting by? What has sorted done? It's definitely sorted it, but what is it sorted? Well, sorted is it has taken this list of tuples, and it by default has looked at the first value and sorted by the first value. So which is, kind of cool. It doesn't, you might think, well, it might get confused because it's seeing a tuple and there's two things in there. What does it do? Well, by default, it's going to sort by the first item in that tuple. So in this case, because our keys are words, we get alphabetical sorting. We can change that. We could go the other way. So sorted has this nice thing where you can do sort list in the reverse order. And the default is to go by alphabetical order or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because of this default value of reverse is set by default to false. So you simply change it by doing reverse equals true. And this actually works both with sorted and with .sort. So it's pretty simple. If you want to go the normal order, then you just call sort on your, or sorted in this case, on your item. If you want to go the opposite direction, then you're going to have your item, you do sorted. The first argument is going to be the thing that you want sorted, and the second argument is going to be reverse equals true, and that will give you the opposite order. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to have 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so we're working towards how do we take a dictionary and sort it not just by its first item. Well, we're kind of close, but not really. If we run sorted, we get this, right, which we saw before. If you do the reverse equals true, you're going to get the opposite of alphabetical order. Okay, it's still going by the first item, but we can go either direction here depending on what we need. So let's look at another thing that we can do with sorted. looking at all these flexibility things, and let's look at actually sorting by the non-first element, either way, reverse or otherwise. So if we have a list of 2 tuples, what if we want to sort by the second item in that in the tuple and not the first? How do we do that? So there's a bunch of ways to do this. Let's look at one solution. And the solution that we're going to look at is, let's create a new list where the numbers come first. So the second item is going to be the first item in the tuples, and the strings, which was our first item, is now going to be the second item in our list, or in our tuple, right? So this is what we normally get if we sorted by items. Our key, in this case, our string is first and our number is second. So let's take this list and let's take the 2 items in each tuple and reverse them. Let's put them in opposite order so that the number is first and the string is second. And we're going to use a loop here. So it's nice to know that mydict.items, since it's a list, we can loop over it. And we can use the loop and then create a new list. We're going to take the 2 items from each tuple and append them to our new list, but in opposite order from what they are in the original list. And then we can sort the new list, either in order or reverse order. So here's what that code would look like. We have our dictionary, then we create a new list, an empty list. Then we're going to loop over the tuples in mydict.items. So for pair in mydict.items, pair is going to be a tuple, a 2 tuple in this case. So when we do appending, what we're going to do, in order to keep them in tuples, we're first going to put them in a tuple. We're going to create a tuple, and we're going to use our indexing square bracket notation to get the second item in the pair in our original tuple and put it first here by simply saying put it here first, comma, and then take the first item from our original tuple and put it after that. And if we print out we do that loop and then we print it out, we'll get this. So now we have our list of tuples and our values are now first and our words, our keys, are second in each of the tuples. So now when we sort it, we can resort it by reverse and we will get the list returned with the highest number first. So the highest value first, down to the smallest value. So there's a bunch of tricks that we just went over. We learned about sorting. We learned about 2 methods that you can do that with. So you can use the sort method with list. You can use the sorted function. And then we looked in more detail with the sorted function. We did reversed, which you can see we did here. And then we looked at a little trick, which, as a hint to you, will be very useful when you get ready to do homework 4, about how to take a dictionary with keys and values and sort them by the values.